Sections about finance and valuations. And what we did last time was I explained you how the finance side of it works in terms of the calculations and everything, and I and I showed you the finance calculation sheet, and I shared that with you. So I will be referring back to this because there is a portion that I want you to understand, and finance is one of those things that it takes a little longer to get your head around. And what you need to do is understand this totally, so that you can maneuver fluidly when you are doing your developments and everything, and you are trying to negotiate terms and conditions as well. So I'm gonna keep switching back and forth between the Excel spreadsheet and the PowerPoint presentation that I've got for you today. So let's keep going. So today we're going to talk about development finance. Actually, sorry, if before we go ahead, is there would anybody like to ask any questions from last time, or if they would like to share something they would have come across the site or project that they want to discuss? I'd be happy to take it on. Otherwise, we'll discuss it next Thursday. Next Thursday is going to be again an action-packed section on negotiation and site acquisition, different kinds of structures and all of that we'll discuss next week. Negotiation is one of my strong strong points. Not only that, I actually like that game. A lot of people get scared that if you say something and we lose it, and I like to look at it as a game where I say something and then something would happen, and then it's like a little dance. Like we'll say something and the other one would do something, or it would trigger a reaction from somebody, a certain kind of reaction that you'll get from them. And yeah, it's a delicate balance, and it's very different when the market is flat, when the market is hot, and when the market is declining. So there are different kinds of things that you need to negotiate in different kinds of markets. So we'll discuss that next week. Let's keep going. If anybody wanted to ask a question or do something, press the hand button. I'll give the mic to you and you can ask your question. Otherwise, I'll continue with today's class. All right, let's continue. We're going to talk about development finance. Very important topic, because it's all about finance. Remember the 11 laws that I discussed? One of the laws was that if you can control the entry and the exit, and the entry happens because you've got finance, and the exit happens because you control the sales channel, you can make a lot of money in this. So this is all about the entry, which is all about finance. So finance is, we're going to discuss what are the banks looking for, what is commercial finance, what are the different stages, what are the different types of loans that you can get, a little bit of a finance checklist, and I might be able to show you a loan document, what it looks like from one of my current developments. So what are the banks looking for? Banks are usually looking for a project report, and the more formal that report is, the more credibility the bank would be able to give you. And I kid you not, banks do look for credibility. They would always do. Of course, if you can't service, or if the project doesn't stack, it won't work. But they do give a lot of credibility to people who can deliver a project now, or who've got runs on the board. Now, most of you are going to ask me, so what do we do, because we haven't got any runs on the board? Well, guys, when I was doing stuff, this all happened in the post GFC world. And when I did my first development, I had no funds. Like I had no job. Actually, I had the funds up, but I didn't have the job. I had no job, but my first development was a $4 million nine apartment building. I just couldn't get my head around doing just a normal duplex. So I went for that. And for me to be able to get around that fact was, I went and got a mentor. Then I told the bank that I've got a mentor who's looking at everything. And then we had enough equity between myself and my partner who was in the project with me. And my partner had good cash flow, which actually helped a lot, not only in securing the land finance, but also the commercial finance. And believe it or not, the commercial finance was arranged without a single pre-sale. And the project was funded by Westpac. Now this is going back sometime in 2015. That's when the construction loan was finalized. And this is in Brisbane, because this project took, we went into the project sometime in mid 2013. Didn't get the DA until end 2013. After we got the DA, there were some other issues that came on the side. We had to resolve that, but we didn't start building up until 2015 sometime. So the project took 2.5 years, but it was in the hindsight, I could have cut it short. I could have shaved off months from the project had I known what I was doing, but I just got in there and started doing everything. So, but we didn't have any of that. So the way we did it was, I said that I had some experience, but that was overseas, which was as good as none, because they wouldn't consider that overseas experience as much. So we tried to look impressive to the bank, and we did that by just putting together a project report and a good feasibility study that showed them that, look, these guys know what they're talking about. They've covered everything. They've got everything, and that's how we got our first project across the line. So they are basically looking for a project report that you might have to show to them, and the project report would have a project charter. Now there is, if you actually go into this section here, I think John today asked me this question, where is that report? So that report is here, this section here called project report. I explain how to use that report, and you can come down here. I think either this video or video number 2 should have the template underneath the video here. So you've got these 3 templates, and in these 3 templates you can download them and you can put your own project report together. And as part of the course, this is what you need to hand in. More than handing it in, you actually need to put it together on a real life project with the proper due diligence done on the project. Because if you put this report together, you're ready to invest or jump into the project. And you just have to dive in and do it on a project and present it to the rest of the class. So that's how this is going to work. So this is what they will look for. So if you're looking for a template, it's already there. Even if you don't want to use this template, I'll give you a site. It's called PM Docs. PM Doc or PM Docs, something like that. I think it's called PM Docs, which is basically project management documents. Nope, this is not the one. Project management docs, or I don't know, project management doc. Yeah. So on this side, if you know about project management, now I actually started studying project management in construction. I went through the first 3 modules and then just didn't have the time to actually finish it, because when the course material arrived at my doorstep, I actually needed a forklift to bring that in, and I managed to bring it in without a forklift because the material was so big, heavy, fat books. But I studied the project management side of it rather than the construction side of it, because I enrolled into project management construction, and I studied most of the part that had to do with project management, but not the actual construction part. So I left the course in between. This is the only course in my entire life that I did not complete, and I regret it. But at the time, I just didn't have that extra time to be able to sit and learn through and churn through all of that. And somehow, somewhere, I thought that construction wasn't something I'd really want to get into and control and be on the side and make sure that the site's managed properly, or make sure that the OH&S is managed properly on the side. So somehow there was lack of this disinterest as well. And then there was one of the course that I started and didn't complete, and that has been the only one that has ever happened. Otherwise, if I get into something by by hook or crook, I know that I've got to complete it, and I never do it just to get a pass in it. I usually do it just so that I understand all of it. But this is the site. It's called Project Management Documents, projectmanagementdocs.com. It has a template for everything. Now, this is all on the net. All you had to do was look for it, search for it, and most of these templates are actually free. So there's a feasibility study template. You can, if you want to be creative, you don't have to stick to the template that I've given you guys. You can pick up a template from here. There are no hard and fast rules. If you see that you can use one of the templates here and put it together, by all means, you can go to this site. It's free and it's available for everybody to use. Go for it, and you can download and get a project management charter. You can understand communication, and the good part about this is that the green thing that you see on the side also explains what you need to actually put in there. So if you put two and two together and you've gone through the course and you know where to get which information, you'll be able to fill in this gap and have a full report of your own put together that will look 100% professional. So if you click on something like this, I just want to open one of those and see what it looks like. And that's what it looks like. So, and you can change it and substitute it with your own logos. You can, so introduction, it will tell you, so it provides high level overview of the project, what's included in the project management plan. And that is it. It's not rocket science. I actually went to this site to be able to put my first report on the project together. So hop on this site. It's called projectmanagementdocs.com, and even if you just search for project management docs, this is the site that will pop up first. And pick up any template that you like from there. I think it's got plenty of see, there's a business case one, there's a work breakdown structure. If you don't know what that is, WBS is basically, if you need to get a project done, you break it down into different tasks, and then each task is broken down into subtask and subtask and subtask and so on. This is like a full project management thing that we do to control every aspect of the project, because everything needs to be broken down. And you can then start creating these process maps also from there if you wanted to. So these templates are available and they are 100% free. Project initiation process, planning process, executing, controlling, closing, project documents, agile templates. It's got all sorts of things. Have a play around with it. I think it's a good resource. That's why I'm sharing with everybody. Okay, so let's go back to this project report. So what are they going to look for? The build contract. They want to, now this risk management plan. I haven't discussed the risk management module as yet, but before we get to the end, I will discuss it. It is there. It is already available. If somebody wanted to, if anybody wanted to jump ahead and, sorry, one second, I lost my mouse. Where is my mouse? Here. So if somebody wanted to get in here and figure out what it was, the risk management section is under due diligence. It's a short section, and if you wanted to go through it, you can. Otherwise, I will definitely go through this before the end of the course, but not just today. So you've got a risk management plan. They will look at the demand and supply. They will look at the market research. They will look at your financial feasibility, market comparables, whether or not site's got a permit or a building permit. If it does, they will want all these documents. If your site's leased and it's got a tenant in it, they will want to have a look at the lease. They will want to have a look at, they will scrutinize, they will have a department that will, it's their compliance department, which will scrutinize every pre-sale contract, and it has to be at an arm's length and must have a 36-month minimum sunset clause. And a sunset clause, those who don't know what a sunset clause is, when we get into the marketing and off the plan contracts, I'll explain that. But in a nutshell, what it is you get somebody to sign a contract which is off the plan. You've got at least 36 months to deliver the project before they can actually before they can actually say, look, I want out. I don't want to settle on this property. So that's what a sunset clause actually does. Then we've got developer's profile. They will look at what you do and any kind of education background that you can put in there, even a degree in finance or anything if you've got it. They will look at that. If you've done smaller developments, if you've done a duplex or anything, do actually put that in there. If you haven't done anything, it doesn't matter. Put that in your profile that you are studying property development, or if you what I did was I put the entire profile of my mentor in there. So yeah, that's telling the bank that I'm leveraging off my mentor because he's looking at everything that I'm doing. So that's how I got around it. Now, what you will be providing all of this to the bank. This is only to impress the bank and show to the bank that you know what you are doing. But what the bank would do is they will order their own valuation report and their own quantity surveying report and their own QS report in order to mitigate all of that. So their commercial valuation report would have all of this: demand, supply, market research. Won't have the financial feasibility, but will have a project related site value that we discussed last week under financial feasibility. It will have all the basically even the risk management stuff it would have under the valuation report. So supporting documents, property information like details, land purchase, construction contract, all these things will be there. If you've got a marketing plan, they almost always ask for a marketing plan. So if you say, look, I'm going into the market, we're going to get the pre-sales, you got to tell them that this is how I'm going to get the pre-sales, or this is where I'm advertising right now. So they like to see the more detail you can provide them, the better it is for them to actually tick all their boxes and give you a pass. So yeah. So how does a lender evaluate a development loan? They will look at the They look at the credit history of the borrower. So inevitably, anytime you apply for a loan, there will be a credit check done on your credit file. Now, I hope everybody knows how to access their credit file. If you don't, doesn't matter. You will learn right now. There's a company called Veda, which is now taken over by a company called Equifax. Equifax recently got hacked in US, which is a US company. And what they did was they actually sold this data, this company called Veda to this company called, I'm not going to show you my credit file, but I don't really care even if you did look at my credit file because it's squeaky clean. In this industry, you've got to keep your credit file 100% clean. It's called mycreditfile.com.au. You are entitled to get a copy of your credit file for free, but the free one takes a little time for it to get to you. I would say you order one after 7th of October because they've got these cycles where the credit history of every, I don't know, on my scenario, I've got these typical cycles where the credit file gets updated twice a year, 7th of April and 7th of October, something like that. Like on my side, it shows 7th April and 7th October. I'm hoping that that's their time when they update all credit files. So if you ordered one after 7th of October, you'll get the current one. Otherwise, you'll get the one that got updated on 7th of April. Sorry, I'm a little tired today. I've been awake since 3 o'clock in the morning, just doing some work. So yeah, so anybody can get that. So they will always look at your credit history. This is straightforward. Even if you applied for a normal loan, they'll still look at it. And anytime you apply for a loan or apply for a credit card or any kind of credit, there is an entry on this file. The more entry there is, it's got an automatic scoring system that will give you a score, and banks will look at it. So if you've got too many inquiries on your credit file, they will start questioning you. What are you doing? How many places did you go to and get knocked back? So every time there is an inquiry there and you didn't go through with the loan, people will question, why is that happening? Why did somebody else not give you the loan. So be very careful. And usually, if you're talking to a broker and he's smart, or you're talking to a bank manager or whoever you talk to for your credit, and if they are smart, they will not let they will not let an inquiry go hit your account until they are 100% sure that you're gonna get through with your loan. So be careful with that. Assessment, proposed development. So they will assess the development. They want to make sure. See, banks also want to make sure that they are not financing a development deal where their market is already flooded with a lot of projects in the area. And banks will also look at their own risk profile. So what I mean by that is, for example, your project might be absolutely fine, and your serviceability could be absolutely fine, and your cash position or equity position could be absolutely fine. But if, for example, let's say ANZ looks at an area and says, "Oh, I've lent out. For example, I'm funding, 50 developments in Windsor, for example, in this suburb." They're not gonna be inclined on lending you in that area, because they are already funding about 50 of them in that area. So for them, it becomes like spreading their risk across different regions, so that they are not concentrated on one area. So that could, and that doesn't mean that your project's bad or your serviceability is bad. That just means that the banks decided not to go ahead with it. So under risk assessment, they will look at they will try and minimize the risk, and they do that by a pre-sale agreement. So your pre-sales, off the plan contracts, your lower LVRs. That means instead of giving you an 80% LVR, they might say, "I'll give you only 65." So loan to value ratios will change. Tripart agreement. Now it's called tripartite. It's a mouthful, so mostly people just call it a tripart agreement. And what it is like an agreement between the bank, builder, and the borrower. So it's the bank's money that we are using as developers, but then we are giving it to the builder. And if for whatever reason the builder goes bust, the bank can actually step in and assign another builder to finish the job. So that's what a tripart agreement says. And no bank will extend you the loan without that agreement, because it's in bank's interest to actually make sure that the project is complete, because an incomplete project is worth nothing to the bank. They will also look at fixed price turnkey construction contract. It'll always be fixed price. Not only that cost plus agreement that a lot of people say and talk about, and we try and do it all the time. But by law, that cost plus agreement is not allowed in the residential industry at all. Even if you got your hands on a cost plus agreement, at the beginning of the agreement, on the first page, it says that don't sign it. If your builder is giving you this contract, don't sign it. Is not for the residential part. So they've actually done away with the cost plus agreement. It only happens when in a lot of when we get to the construction, we look at each of these different types of agreements and what they have. They look at developers' life insurance. More often than not, we will have the banks will actually ask us to take a life insurance, because if the developer died, how is the bank going to get their money back? So they force us to get life insurance, and we all have a life insurance at this stage. And yeah, this is the same thing as lender's exposure in that suburb or area. So type of tenancy, length of lease, and credit worthiness of the tenant, if there is a lease in place. They will also look at the type of project. So if an area has a lot of apartments going, they would not want to be able to lend in that area. And they will also look at the projected sales. So how does a lender evaluate the loan? Banks like to see a development margin of cost of at least 15%. That's what we've been talking about in our feasibility, of at least 15% for smaller projects, and a minimum of 20% for larger projects. If you are doing a duplex and it's between 10 to 12%, that's also fine, because that's exactly what a duplex will give you in today's market. So valuation project report is a good starting point for the valuer. That means that when they go and get the valuation done, and if you already got a project report, it's a good starting point for the valuer to start off with. And chances are that they will come very close to what you've already put in there. Have you actually made that effort to actually provide all the pre-sales that you've considered and all the things that you've considered in order to do that. So your claims will be scrutinized. In terms of the block of land that you are purchasing, you got to refer to, okay, we'll go into the next slide. Quality of security, any other asset that you may have to cross collateralize. So if you haven't got a lot of cash, but you've got a property that's got equity in there, so they might use that as collateral to give you to advance you the loan and everything. So GRV, or the end value of your developed product, it helps if the GRV of your end product is at median value. What median value is all about is that it's the middle of the market. So I usually, whenever I'm buying a property, I try and look at the value if I'm buying it at the middle of the market somewhere. If I'm a little bit over, because that's what happens, if a site is really good and has a lot of development potential, it's actually sold based on its development potential rather than the permit that it has. So, or you can put 4 on it, so hence the value of the property is X. So, and you might not be able to put 4 on it. You might get knocked back by council and you might end up with just 3, but it doesn't matter because these days agents and vendors know what their land is worth, and that's why they try and push all of that. And that's why you need to become astute at being able to ascertain what you can and cannot put on a site. Fire sale scenario, so the banks will look at a fire sale scenario. So if this is the worst case scenario, if the market took a 5% dive and the property values went down by 5% or 10%, so they will look at that and see what they can get, and hence they actually try and mitigate all of that by giving a lower LVR. So they will look at the area suburb of your development. Banks mitigate the risk by funding development in area with a history of strong capital growth and a balanced demand and supply ratio. Now, the other thing that would matter would be the financial strength of the developer's track record, and the interest rate. The financial strength of the developer, as I said, I didn't have a job. All I had was cash, but I went and joined hands with somebody else who had the cash and a cash flow. So when we joined the hands together, we had the required equity that was required to do the project, and we were able to do the project. And that is what most of you will have to do, and that is why I have been encouraging all of you to get together and be able to do the project. Because if you've got enough money to settle on the land and get your DA and get your building permit and everything, you'll have no problem getting finance for this, because at that time it just becomes a matter of numbers and everything. And when we get to next week, I'll show you how to structure it so that you have the least amount of holding cost, and your money comes in at the latest in the project. So, sorry. Interest rates, lender reviews cost of raising funds and determines the profit margin that they must achieve. So what they will do internally with themselves is that they will review their cost of raising the funds and their margin that they want to achieve on the project. So based on their risk assessment of the project, they will assign a margin that they want to make from the lend to your development. So based on the profit margin is based on risk taken by the lender and the length of time these funds will be outstanding for. And if the lender suspects that the lend period will be short, the interest rate will be much higher. And if the developer have a history with the bank that with substantial balance with the lender, profit margin may reduce. So this is for the bank. Like for example, if you do a lot of business with a single bank, so say for example, for us right now, that bank is National Australia Bank. NAB knows, now for example, I haven't got a job. Like I don't go to a 9-to-5 job. I've got 10 different entities, and I've got a complex web of structures in which I've done my developments, in which there are different entities that I invoice my construction company with for for development management fee, and then I use the same entity to invoice and as a consultancy for my other entities. Then I've got this education business that works in a different entity. It's like a complex web of different entities. Now, for me to be able to show them, this is what I make, it was very difficult. So I went to my bank manager who financed us this, and I said, look, these are my 10 entities. Now, if you want me to pay a lot of tax, I'll push all of this thing out and show that I make a lot of income, and then I'll go pay a lot of tax. But then defeats the purpose, because I can legally distribute profits from one entity into another entity and offset my taxes in 100% legit ways, but I don't want to pay all the tax. In fact, last year I had to declare, I had an entity which made a lot of loss. Remember I told you I made a $450,000 loss when I did a textile business here, and that entity I kept alive for that reason. So now all that loss and everything has been absorbed. Some of it are left in there, so I can use at a later date. But I had to transfer something out, and I paid a lot of tax last tax. So this time then there was again I was going to pay a lot of tax. So I went to him and I said, look, I will pay this tax only if the bank wants me to. So look at all my entities, figure out where the money is coming from, so you can ascertain what's going on, and then refinance my 2 investment properties, so I can free some equity to be able to do my development again. So the bank looked at everything. Now a broker can do the same as well, but I've dealt with brokers, and I'm now dealing with the bank directly. I have found that dealing with the bank directly is much better, because sometimes, although even dealing with brokers before was fine, but sometimes I feel that brokers are more looking to I don't want to use that word fabricate, but I'll use it anyway. They're looking to hide or disguise or present the deal more creatively, or to get the loan across the line. But I've personally found that dealing with the bank was much better. Now, you might have a personal experience with another bank saying that, these banks never looked after me, they didn't do anything, they just rejected the loan totally. Now, it just depends upon the bank manager that you come across. And the bank was strict in the sense that they scrutinize everything. Now, about the money laundering fiasco that's going on with all the banks. All the banks are being audited, and all these things are everybody's looking into all of these things. So what's happening is that now they are looking at who's the shareholder for the corporate trustee, who's the unit holders in that, who's the beneficiary. Has the bank identified all of them? So they've gone into a whole different level of scrutiny with all of these things. So I've personally found going to the bank was much better, but you might personally find that going via a broker is much better, because they would know which kind of lender would lend you the money for what. So banks will have different kinds of establishment fees and charges in addition to interest rate, usually between 1 to 3% of the total loan amount. And another way for the lender to make a profit and reduce its risk. Construction loan period, usually based on construction contract period plus extra time to achieve settlement plus occupancies. If there are occupancies, or if there are leases in place that need to be handed over and occupancy needs to occur. Terms and condition, extra equity, extra collateral, personal guarantees, jointly and severally. So what is jointly and severally, which is basically a type of guarantee? What that means is that if four of you come together to do a project, banks are going to have all 4 of you jointly and severally responsible for the loan, which is fair. I don't think that it's not fair. If all of you have put in the same amount of equity, and you are responsible for a certain amount of shares, a certain amount of units, and you're doing the project together, you should have no problem being the guarantor for the loan, as long as all 4 of you are the guarantor of the loan. So banks would want banks will get to you for jointly and severally. What it means is that they won't come after for example, they will come after anyone who they see has the money. So they may go after all 4 of you, which they usually will, But if they found one of them was stronger than the other and was easier to extract the money from, they can go after that one first in whatever order they prefer. Now, every time I talk about this jointly and severally, a lot of people who are new to this are dead scared of going into this. Now, I want you to stop thinking about this, because if I ever started thinking about the guarantees and everything, I'll never be able to get anything done. And if you go to a lawyer to get advice, because inevitably the first time you sign a loan with any bank, they will ask you to take all the loan documents, go to a lawyer, pay them $300, $500, then they will read those documents, those loan documents, then they will schedule a meeting with you. Then the lawyer is supposed to give you an advice that the lawyer has told you of all the repercussions that you might end up in by signing these documents. Now, the first time you do it, you have to go to the lawyer, you have to have it signed, and the lawyer will advise you that, do you know what you're doing? Do you know if the shit hits the fan, they will come and take you, your house, your car, your bike, your rollerblades, and your skates and everything. So don't get scared with all of this. This is part of this industry, and it very rarely happens that the bank will come in and start liquidating everything that you've got and leave you in your jocks and your socks. It never happens. In most 99% of the cases, it never happens, and I'll tell you the reason why it never happens. So let's say you're doing a development, correct? Your money is not gone into on a racehorse. It's gone into a property that has brick and mortar. So if the shit was to hit the fan, what's going to happen? The first thing that needs to evaporate before the bank comes knocking on your door is the property value has to become zero. Now, the property value will never go to zero because first you've done all the due diligence, you've looked at the market, you've chosen the right suburb, you've done your due diligence, you're not buying, unless a sinkhole develops on your side and it sucks everything out, even then you would have some sort of an insurance on the property. So that's not going to happen. And even for the bank to actually come to you, first of all your profit has to evaporate. Like, you have to lose all. So you are in a project because you're making some profit there. So the first thing that evaporates is your profit. The second thing, all the land value has to evaporate. Now, how do you think the land value can evaporate? Unless something really bad happens. So don't let these things scare you. You just have to be brave enough that you handle this. Now, the first time I signed documents like these, I was scared, and it's a natural feeling. But you have to overcome that. The second time it becomes a little bit better. The third time a little bit better. And now we don't even think about any of this. Now we look at all of this and we just sign. We just tell the guy, you just let us know where to sign. And you only have to do that with every new bank once. So if you do another loan, for example, I do another loan with NAB and all of that, I don't have to do that again. But the first time they financed us, I had to do it because they wouldn't lend us. So the first time, you got to show the bank that you have taken independent advice from a lawyer, that you can you know what you're doing and the kind of loan that you are getting into. Now, commercial finance is a little bit different. Now, commercial finance kicks in when you're developing 2 or more townhouses, or 2 or sometimes even 3. You can get away with the retail finance, and I'll explain you the exact difference between the two. And your LVRs are between 60 to 75% of GRV or TDC, as we explained last week. Interest is usually capitalized. Facility is joint and severally guaranteed if there are more than one shareholders in it, and lenders may ask for pre-sales. That's what happens in a commercial finance. So LVR of 60 to 65%. So this is what we were trying to discuss last week, where how the land finance portion, where you just settle on the land, and it's just retail. It's just retail finance. And when the finance actually, when the construction kicks in, it converts into a commercial loan. And let's keep going so that I can show you how that works. So you've got LVR of 60 to 75% of gross realization value, or your total development cost. and maximum 60% against the undeveloped security value prior to commencement of development in accordance with council approvals. Maximum 80% against the total development cost ex GST. We discussed that last time, that it always has to be ex GST or ex GST or TDC and GRE both have to be ex GST. So this is what I was trying to explain in that finance module again. So if you when this module's over, if you watch this again, now I know this sounds boring, but I have been guilty of even knowing everything and then even forgetting that I had to do my calculations on ex GST. You know what I mean? So it is important that you remember these things. So lenders may mitigate risk again. So these pre-sales that they ask you for is also to actually test the product in the market. I think this slide is out of order, shouldn't be here. But anyway, we'll keep going. This slide is supposed to be here. So this is what the project timeline looks like. And all I'm trying to explain you here is that this portion here, which is all about land acquisition. Let's say you sign the contract here, and you have to settle on the land. So it takes you 9 months to go and get your DA. So your town planning permit, it takes about 9 months. But this settlement here that's happening, and you're going to be holding the land for 9 months. This is retail loan. All of this is retail. And what retail is that you go to the bank, you say, look, I want to buy this property. The property doesn't have a DA at the moment. So it's just a normal investment property. So they look at your serviceability, look at how much money you make, or you and your wife make together, or how much all of yous make together for you to be able to settle on it with a longer settlement. And you say, okay, we're gonna pay the installments every month. So what you need to come out with is that you must have enough money to be able to first settle on the land and pay the monthly installment. And this is what we do in this part here. When we are trying to finance this land, this for duration is actually those 9 months that I was showing you on this section. So this 4 months is actually this 9 months here. So I can change that to, let's say, 9 months. And that what this is telling me is that, okay, for 9 months, I'll have to buy $1 million property, 80% LVR, at 4.5% interest. I'll have to hold it for 9 months. My monthly EMI is going to be about $3,000. And I'll end up paying about $27,000 in holding costs. $27,000 in holding costs. So again, this is the finance setup fee, and we are still talking about all this green stuff here. We're still in that land acquisition mode, or the retail side of the loan, because right now the bank says, I don't care what you're gonna do with it. I don't know if it hasn't got a DA on it. If it hasn't got a DA on it, it's a normal loan, 4.5% interest. You can settle on it and as long as you can service it, they will get you the loan, and you can start putting it together. But this whole idea was to be able to calculate all your costs that you would need in order to get to the building permit. And what is that? So what we are trying to do is not only settle on this using the retail loan, pay for the DA, but also have money to pay for the BA, which is your building approval or your building permit, and then get ready for construction. So now, if you get to this level, you've got the DA, you would start your pre-sales along the same time, get your building permit around the same time, and and then start construction. And your construction would go on for, let's say, 12 months. Now, as soon as construction kicks in, this loan kicks in, this entire retail loan that you've got converts into a commercial loan. That's when the commercial, C for construction, C for commercial. Always remember, when it's construction, it's a commercial loan. Unless you're just doing a duplex. If you're just doing a duplex, you could just get away with the 4.5% interest and like a retail loan, and they might be able to fund it for you for that. But if you're doing a proper development, 4 townhouses or more, or 3, even at 3, it turns into a commercial. But some banks would consider doing a 3 townhouse development with a retail loan as well. So just be careful with that. So this converts into a commercial loan at that stage. And what that means is that your entire loan, your entire debt so far needs to be repackaged, because you could have lender ABC here, like you could have ANZ here, but over here you might have CBA. And then what CBA needs to do is get rid of ANZ. So then they look at the entire total development cost or total GRV of the project, and based on an LVR of 60% or 65% of the TDC or the GRV, they will say, okay, we can give you X amount of money. And in principle, I just want you to understand this in principle. And if you understand this in principle, you'll be able to do your calculations pretty quick. In principle, let's say you owed 700,000 here on the land, and you got an approval for 21, let's say 2.1 million here. So what that 2.1 million is going to be utilized for is that 700K would be paid off instantly so that ANZ can go away. And then CBA would have the first mortgage on the project. But you don't have to then, because it's a commercial loan, you don't have to keep paying the monthly installments. The installments actually get capitalized as soon as the construction kicks in. Now, from that point on, you've got another $1.4 million left in order to do your build, for example. Now, that $1.4 million you don't draw at once. You draw it in progress payments. So I've reached the frame stage. Now I've reached the lockup, or when I've reached the fix-up or whatever. And then based on those stages, you do those drawdowns. And based on those drawdowns, you pay interest on the drawn down amount. You don't pay interest on the 1.4 on the first hit. So that is what we try and capture in this sheet, where when the finance side of it kicks in. Now this is, you might find there's no certain perfect way in order to calculate this, but you can come really close, because every bank would do a different calculation for different scenarios. So yeah, and then you add all the costs together to be able to figure out what your total finance costs are going to be. So let's keep going with this sheet again. So in here we've got line of credit. In your stages, whatever the remaining amount, the developer's equity contribution has to come from somewhere. Your line of credit, or you borrow from friends and family, or your own contributions. Smaller apartments, 45 meters square, banks don't like to lend on such. Actually, not 45, think about 50. So if you're picking up a site with plans and permit, and it has apartments that are 50 square meters, don't get into it, because first, even the investors won't be able to buy a 50 square meter apartment, because banks are not lending against that small size studio apartment kind of thing. I went to refinance my unit in Brisbane, and the first thing the bank manager asked me, I hope it's not a studio apartment. Has it got a parking on the title? Has it got 2 bedrooms? What's the size? So mine is 72 square meters, so I didn't have an issue with it. So these are again the same stages that we're continuing: an acquisition or normal standard variable loan to cover the purchase of land or development site. Normal serviceability requirements come into play, as I was saying, to settle on the land. At this stage, all you have is a block of land or a property. LVR can range from 60% to 95% with LMI, lender's mortgage insurance. Now this doesn't work anymore, because they're not giving the LMI. To certain people, they can still get it, but most developers aren't getting it. But at this stage, see, the LMI kicked in, because at this stage we're only settling on the land portion of it. So LMI, lender mortgage insurance, is basically if you're borrowing over 80% LVR on the land or just a single investment property. Now I think LMI is a very lame thing. The reason for that is, it's like the bank says, okay, I'll give you 90% loan on your money or on the land, but I want you to go and get the lender's mortgage insurance. What does that mean? Well, that means that you go and get an insurance to cover the bank's backside in case you default. So you pay the extra 3,000-4,000, whatever it could take, depending upon the value of the property that you are borrowing against. And then you are saying, oh, I've got this insurance, so I've covered your backside, bank. Thumbs up. So the bank's gonna say, good, great, you covered my backside, so here you go. On $100 property, here's $95 for you. So you put $5 and you can borrow a 95, I'll give you the 95% and you can do that. Now what will happen is that in case you are unable to pay the loan or there's a default on your part, the bank's gonna say, Mr. Insurer, you insured this investor with the lender's mortgage insurance, so why don't you give me the $95 back, and then it's between you and the insurer and the purchaser who got that insurance. So that insurance company is going to pay the bank out their $95. Bank's going to be happy. Bank's got his money back. Bank can go about their business. But that insurance company is going to have all these people after you to take every single penny that you own or have ever owned in order to recoup the $95 that they've paid. So I think I'd rather not get into a project than borrow 95% of something with that high a risk just to be able to make a quick buck. And most people who get into this are trying to make a quick buck. It happens a lot in a market that's hot or it's climbing up, when everybody wants a piece of a property, so they will just go and get a property with 95% LMI and then just sell it after 6 months, 18 months. There were some really ridiculous stories in the areas in Baldwin, in Glen Waverly, in Mount Waverly, the areas that I know of, that a developer buys a property for 2.2 million and then 7 months later sells it for 2.9 million. Fantastic, 700,000. He makes 100K per month in Glen Waverly. Now that guy could have very easily gone and got a 95% loan. So with 5% of his money and 95% leverage, his return on equity was through the roof. Very good. But if for whatever reason things would have turned, he may not have been able to sustain it beyond a very short amount of time because he's borrowed so much. So just be careful with that. I personally do not recommend it. I think these kind of loans should be scrutinized, and people should be screened on an individual basis whether or not they need it, rather than whether or not they can or cannot get. So so when you got construction used for building as an interest only drawdown facility to finance construction as required, after you got the DA, you got the building permit, fixed price contract with the builder. The builder must have homeowner's warranty insurance. I'll explain what that is when we get into the construction part. Every builder must have it. This is a builder covering your backside in case builder goes belly up. So we have a very funny industry. It's like someone's paying for someone insurance so that if someone goes belly up, someone else is covered. It's like instead of minimizing some stuff, there's an insurance for everything to cover everybody. But anyway, so on completion, valuation to determine GRV can range from 9 to 36 months. Come at slightly higher interest rate than other loans. Interest is capitalized. So this is everything that I've already explained to you guys. Development hold. If you hold your development properties for long term, you will have to refinance the loan. Now, what does this mean? This means that the loan, again, this is the stage 3 of the loan. So the first one was land acquisition, second one was construction, and this is switching back to retail loan once again. So now the development is complete and you've decided to hold on to one of the units that you had developed, like exactly the way that I've done. My development is complete. I'm holding on one of the units in my development, and once I hold one of the units in my development, I'm going to say, look, go refinance me. So now this is not a construction loan. For as far as the development entity is concerned, I still have to buy the property at the same rate, which is 730 or 780 or whatever. And that money, I will go to the bank, show them the contract. I have a contract with my own development company for 730. Bank will give me 730. I'll give the 730 to the development entity, and then only then after, because see, the profitability of the development entity is based on all the units being sold at a certain value. Now, unless that money comes into the development, I don't make a profit. So yes, my part of my profit is also made from the part of the money that I've paid to the development. But the difference is we already have a set mates rate set up for all of us. So the money does go into the development entity and everything, and we pay the GST on the difference between mates rates and the contract, and then we get the rest reimbursed back to us in form of a rebate, and you're allowed to do that. So types of loans, you could get bridging loans, mezzanine finance, or non-recourse loan and debt. That doesn't happen anymore, but bridging loans are basically used to quickly move on a deal. So they are typically refinanced after a short term with another lender. Again, I try not to get into these loans, but a lot of developers do that. What would happen is that, for example, and generally there could be a need for them to do that because their money could be tied up in a project that comes that is going to complete in 3 months' time, but now they've got a site that they want to move on to. Now they haven't got the funds because their funds are tied up in a project that's going to complete in 3 months or so. So they go to all these second tier and third tier lenders and say, look, can you bridge me? And what they'll do is they'll look at all of the situation and everything and see what you're going to make from that development that's going to complete in 3 months. They'll give you a bridging loan, but it'll come at a higher interest rate. Often used to obtain planning permit and all of those because I might be able to start some work on the site or start the DA process and everything. Comes from specialized lender willing to take the extra risk. And then we've got mezzanine finance, which is debt capital that gives the lender the right to convert to ownership or equity interest in the company if the loan is not paid back in time and full. So this is basically you telling the lender that if I don't pay it, you can take equity in the project. And now I haven't seen these happen in in boutique developments, but in land subdivisions, these kind of loans happen all the time. It's used by developers to secure additional financing for development projects where there is a shortfall of equity required by the main or senior lender. So, for example, it could be the bank says, look, I'll give you only 60% and you only have 20% of the TDC, for example. So you have a shortfall of 20% or so. And you want to bridge that 20%, that's when you go and get a mezzanine finance, but then they've got a second mortgage on it. And usually it won't happen unless you're dealing with a second tier or third tier lender, because top 4 banks don't like to see a second mortgage when they are financing something. So now what you could do, however, is have another property somewhere else and get a loan against that from somebody else and then use that loan into your development property. Finance is a major part for any developer because this is the entry point. And if you don't understand how it works and the things that you can do and when it can be injected, when it can be pulled back, when it can be refinanced, when it can be leveraged off, you can't be a good developer without a thorough understanding of how finance is working, because we are always juggling money. Understanding of finance and understanding of cash flow is super duper important for the developer. Even now, I'm refinancing stuff. Then this is going to happen, and then I'm going to do something which I'm going to build my own place that I'm going to live, and then I'm going to reapply again to get a higher limit on the house that I live in to be able to free up some equity. But then that equity I can't use in my tax because with the interest that I pay on that loan I can't use it. But if I borrow it out to my other entity and then that entity does the development, that interest can be offset against my income. So all those things, it starts getting complicated, but it's not once you understand the basic concepts of these things. So we are always juggling money so that we have to make sure that we not only stay liquid, but we also got a buffer and we can do some development. Now, a lot of people look at all of this and say, oh, it's too hard. No, it's not too hard. So long as you have an open mind and you understand how this is going. And you can only understand is that if you start looking at your own situation, and as your own situation starts improving, as you start doing your developments, you will be able to understand how you can start moving and start juggling your money. So so make sure you spend the time to understand this. Okay, non-recourse loan or debt. secured by collateral, real property, but the borrower is not personally liable. These used to happen in Australia in the good old days, but I don't think they happen anymore. That means that somebody has secured the loan against the property, but you are not liable for it. So it doesn't happen anymore. They might take your property, but they might not be able to come after you. Which is basically saying the property is all you'll get. Now this could happen for big corporations. So if it's a big company like Mirvac or whatever, now who's the director of Mirvac? Now that director can't be personally liable for money that Stockland or Mirvac borrows. You know what I mean? So in those scenarios, these kind of debts become more common because they can't, sue the CEO because a development went bad. They'll come after the company. They'll come after what they've lent against and take that as an asset. Or they might say, put two other properties as an asset so that we can, so that the bank can be comfortable with. But then they're not coming after the CEO or the director of the company, so to speak. So that's what these loan recourse debts are. If borrower defaults, the lender can seize the property pledged as security, but lender's recovery is limited to that property. That is, the lender cannot come after the borrower even if the collateral does not cover the full defaulted amount. Now, don't worry about this because the lender would never need to come after the other guy because they will reduce their LVR to 50% or 60% or even lower. So banks have their other ways of mitigating these risks. So when you go for a finance and you just want to settle on the land, make sure you've got these things. You've got your current pay slips, your group certificate, additional pay slips. I have none of these. Self-employed, yes, this is what I have because that's what I did. Of all my 10 different entities, I had to provide them 2-year tax returns for all of them, assessment notices, and 2 years business financials and tax returns for any business that I had, which was registered for GST and everything. So yeah, they will always ask for it. If you've got rental properties, it's good that you can show them a statement that you're making rent that gets added to it. So they'll have your 100-point ID, your rates notice, your credit card and all that. Saving assets, current statement of all existing debts, they will ask for it. They might ask for it. Now, sometimes a lot of people find this process very daunting where, banks ask for, send me your last 2 years bank statements for XYZ account. It's something that only you see, nobody else sees it. And then suddenly you got to send it to your bank manager or whoever, It's a little uncomfortable for a lot of people. It was for me when I started off. But you got to look at it. It's a process that they have to go through. They are sitting there trying to tick all the boxes. So unless they have ticked all the boxes, they will not, forward advance you the loan. So think of it as just a process. Don't think of it them asking you how much you're worth, because they will do that. There's another form, it's called an asset position, a net asset position of an individual, and you'll have to fill it out. And it's got all your assets, all your liabilities, everything that you own, from your car to your jet boat to whatever is valuable, or even the furniture that's in your house. What do you think is worth? They will ask all of that, and they'll ask you to put together a net position. It's called the asset position statement. That's what it's called. And I've got a copy of it I can show you from NAB. And we all have to fill it out every time we go through a loan. Initially, I used to say, shit, what am I going to write here? Maybe I do this, do that. So don't let these things bother you. I'm saying that because they used to bother me, and I feel that a lot of people would feel what I used to feel, but I don't anymore. So that's why I'm telling you that if you do feel like that, don't, because later on you won't. So yeah. So low doc loans, they'll ask for it. Low doc loans are loans where they don't ask for a lot of financials. So if you've got a company or whatever, you can get a letter from the accountant saying, look, this guy does make X amount of money every year. And if your accountant can actually give you that letter, it may get you across the line. I actually managed to do my loan when I didn't make the money and everything. But I had investments put into somewhere where I had to get a letter from the accountant saying that I'm worth X amount of money. For to be able to do a low doc loan. So yeah, but never got it. So construction, copy of building contract, they'll ask for plans. They'll ask for stamped council plan, which is an endorsed drawing. So when we get to the off the plan contract, I will go into that in a bit more detail. Okay, so now we are at valuations. Before I start valuations, I wanted to know would anybody like to ask anything about finance? I see a lot of people attending the webinar, but I don't see any hands come up. I just hope that you guys are still there and not just press the attend button and not be there. Okay, Will. Yes, Will.
Hey, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Just one question. Before you had a slide that you were showing that I think it was the first 9 months of the development.
Yeah.
You had holding costs when you were going just for a residential loan. That slide.
Yeah.
So from the first month to the ninth one, you've got just like a regular retail loan, like if you were just going to buy a property.
Yeah.
In terms of minimizing those holding costs,
Yeah.
is there any ways that we can go on minimizing those holding costs?
Yes.
Let's say, for example, an option agreement. Is that something that could be discussed or could be used in today's market?
Smaller sites, option agreement, very difficult. Bigger sites, complex sites, option agreement is possible. However, longer settlement on smaller sites is possible, and I always do that. The site that hasn't got a plan or permit, I need a minimum of 8 months settlement on them. Otherwise, I don't do that. I don't.
Okay.
I just move on. So what I'm trying to do essentially here is in my terms and conditions, I'm trying to negotiate this first 12 months where I don't need to settle on the land, but I can still go and get my DA application, get my BA and whatever I need on the site. So that when it's time for me to settle on the thing, this portion where I need to pay the retail portion is the shortest amount of time or is none. You know what I mean? So I'm going straight in there, and what's happening with that is it's not only helping me control the site without actually paying any holding cost or interest cost or going through the full application again and trying to settle on the block.
Okay. Do you think it's easy to get long-term settlements in today's market?
Yeah.
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 I guess if you offer a good price as well.
I've got three sides with 12 month settlements. There's a fourth one that I'm negotiating, and the fourth one would be 30 days due diligence, and if I'm happy with the due diligence, it will be 6 months settlement. So yeah. So I just don't do it. It's you just decide that's how you're gonna do it, and if you're serious and you want to sell your site, this is what I'm going to offer you. And most people would say yes, no, and if they say no, you just move on, you brush it off, and you keep going.
Well, you still give them the 10% of the land cost to secure the property. Is that right?
Not necessarily. I negotiate 5 because I want to be as liquid as possible. The more money you give them, it gets locked away. Yes, of course, you can use it and reduce your settlement amount, what you're going to pay in the settlement. But hey, you've just taken a chunk of cash from your cash flow. See, earlier I also mentioned that finance and cash flow are two major skills that every developer must have, and cash flow is managing and juggling your cash flow.
Okay, perfect. Thanks for that.
No worries at all. Okay, just give me 1 second. Yes, Neil, I'm just going to unmute you. Yes.
Amber, I just wanted to know if you could please recap on your takeout strategy. You referred to purchasing some units at a mate's rate, and just can you recap on that, please?
Yeah, sure. Let me explain you this. I'll just do an Excel spreadsheet. So what's happening is that let's say 650,000, and let's just copy that, right? So let's say you're developing 4 townhouses, correct? And each townhouse you've got a mates rate at 650,000. What mates rate says that the development entity still makes a profit at 650,000. But what you want to do is you want to free up as much equity as you can when you actually settle and keep that unit. Correct? So
Yep.
what you want to do is inflate the contract that you're going to do in order to settle on that. So you do the inflation at 730,000. And that way you've managed to inflate it for $80,000. Because if
Yep.
the bank looks at 730,000 as your contract price and you get an LVR, or let's say 80% refinance on this, it's 80% of the contract price, not 650. 650 is
Yep.
your internal understanding that for the development I'm going to pay 650 if I settle on it. Now the development, to be fair to the development has to pay not stamp duty, GST on 730,000 based on margin scheme. So what I would do is go that divided by 11, find out the GST there, go that divided by 11, find out the GST there, and that minus this is 7272. That's the extra bit GST that would come out of my pocket. So, but the difference here, which is about $80,000, hang on one second. That $80,000 there is my rebate that has to come back to me. But my actual rebate will eventually be $80,000 and the GST difference. Because, so I'll get back 72,727. This is so that the development entity doesn't have to pay the extra GST on the rebate that's going to come back to me. So I calculate that for the development entity side, and then I get a rebate of 72,727. So I've managed to get that extra bit of equity free because my contract was 730,000. And the actual value that my agreed price with my own development entity was 650.
Okay, so essentially the benefits here is you're allowing yourself to get into this townhouse or unit without the deposit. That's what
Yeah.
the ultimate benefit.
Yep. But what's happening on this side? These are actual numbers, by the way. My contract was 730. That's what I've done. My equity injection was 266 on this, and after all the developments have settled, even at mates rates, even at that 650 across the board, everything that has settled, there's 166,000 just on the development side. So what I need to do is, while I look at this, I look at 650,000 less sum of these two. That means I need to come up with 217. But when I went to the bank, I freed up another 80,000 there. So essentially, I only need to come up with the difference here that I need to get from the bank. But then I'm able to free up all of this money that my profit and my initial investment that went in there. So I can take all of this money out from that. So I've added another 80,000 to the actual equity that I could have got free.
Okay.
I hope I've explained it well. I think I was a little bit all over the place. But
I think generally I get the position. I suppose my question, the question then becomes the $218,000 that you need to fund.
Yeah.
That only occurs at that time because you're trying to time all the settlements in line with the other, with you taking out your profits, right?
Yep. Into 0.8. Whoop. Up. Hang on. This into 80%. So bank will lend me 584. Out of the 584, I already have 266 of my own equity and 166, which is my share of the profit from the development. So this gives me about 152 that I've got available, that I'm essentially borrowing for this. But I only have to pay them 650. What I need to pay to them is only 650. So what I'm trying to do is maximize what I can borrow from the bank, pay off the 650 and everything else that's remaining in there is mine to be able to draw on that offset account and use in another development. But what I've done in this scenario is that I've also combined my unit from Brisbane, and combined these two, I've managed to free up close to 900,000 in equity. So what you are trying to do, see, you'll always have to inflate your contract with that, is so that, because you want to borrow the maximum amount that you can borrow in order to free up the maximum amount of equity that you can free up. If you give them a if you give them a 650 contract, they will take that as a 650 contract. So yeah.
Understood.
Yeah. All right. I think somebody else. Thank you very much, Neil. I think somebody else had a hand up as well. Did Casey, did you have your hand up? You wanted to ask a question? Yep, hang on one second. Yes, go on, Casey.
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you said you'd hold a property for 12 months, when you're doing no money down deals, how do you, because you're going to need money to get all the plans and permits and that, like how do investors feel about giving out money that for a project that essentially isn't in concrete yet?
Can you repeat that question again? It's
So when you're holding that property and you're doing your due diligence, and then in that like in that thing you got the land acquisition.
Yeah.
So 12 months, but you don't have a project together. So you're relying on investors to give you money to pay for all the DA and BA and whatnot. Have you ever had any troubles getting money out of investors because essentially the project isn't in concrete yet?
There are different kinds of investors. My no money down deal, the one that I did, had no DA.
Okay.
Had no DA at all. And we just went from zero to getting DA. It depends upon how much you can put together in your project report. If you can go to an architect and get some schematics done and show them, look, the architect says this is what we're going to get on this, and I've done my feasibility based on that, that's what it is required. So I've already negotiated a 12-month settlement. So if you if you put in 200K now, which will fund the DA, or we'll get to the building permit stage or ready for construction for 12 months, and they say, look, shit, if I put 200 now, what do I get? So what you can do is still give them a bit of the uplift that you're gonna get when you get to a site which has the DA, from no DA to actually a DA, and the uplift may not be much, but if they get a little bit more money for the investment for coming up front, that'll look really good for them.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Cool.
So if you got something like that and you wanted to structure, bring it and I'll show it to you exactly how it's done.
All right. Sweet.
No worries. Thanks, Casey. Okay, so let's go into valuations. Where is my valuation sheet? Okay, there it is. So why getting a favorable valuation is important, because banks will not lend money to you based on what you say the value of the land is or what you've signed the contract at. They will give you an LVR based on the valuation that they get back. So how to get favorable valuations, understanding valuation methods, what does the valuer look at, different web resources and so on. So get written advice from your accountant on margin scheme before purchasing the site. So make sure you do that. You'll have to supply that to your valuer. We discussed about margin scheme when we were discussing financial feasibility. So whether or not margin scheme is going to apply on that, you'll need to give it to a valuer, because your valuer is working out your project related site value. So he needs to calculate the GST. If you say you're going to be selling your units under margin scheme, there's a different GST value. If you say GST margin scheme doesn't apply, there's a different GST value, and that's what he's looking for in order to, because a valuer will ask you to get a letter of advice from your accountant. Keep that advice handy, as you will need to send it to the valuer. Why getting a favorable valuation is important. If valuation is less than purchase price or your contract price example, it means that more equity will be required by you. So if you look at this example, if LVR is 80%, contract price 1.25, equity required is 20, lenders will lend 80% of valuation, not the contract price. So if the valuation comes in at 1 mil instead of 1.25 mil, your equity required on 80% would be 200 plus the shortfall of 250 to 450, which basically means extra 137,500 required. Now you may or may not have that, and you will only find out when the valuation comes in. So that is why I have included that project related site value and the residual value of land both in there, so that you can see that you're not paying more for the land. And you'll find that the projects that stack up, you'll find that it will show 15% development margin. It'll show that you are paying the right price for the land, and it'll show that the project related site value is stacking up based on your numbers. It's a very good test that your valuation or your project's going to land smoothly, because all those things have come out right. We will touch that again in a feasibility section. I'm still waiting for these guys to give me some. I think on Friday I'm going to get I've got a session with the new feasibility app, and once I do that, it's all in there. I'll do another session on feasibility so you guys really can sink your teeth into it. Now, retail valuation, acquisition of residential property development or site, commercial, used to obtain development finance or construction loan. So normal retail valuations, when you're settling on the block, in most cases, if you go to the top bank, they might not even ask you to pay for the valuation. It's usually just banks will just send somebody to the site, they'll look at it, and then they'll tell the bank, and they may or may not pass on that cost to you. But when a commercial valuation is ordered with Charterkeck Kramer or Mid-Brand or Landmark White, what is it called? Landmark White, another valuation company, and the QS company. If you go to them, they will charge you $4,000 to $6,000 depending upon the size of the project that you are doing. I always try and get at least 3 different quotes so that I can negotiate and get. And you'll find that people who come up with a lower quote will come up with a longer turnaround time. So they might turn around and give you a valuation in 6 weeks, and somebody who comes in with a higher quote might turn around and give you a valuation in 10 days. And then you have to take a call who you go with, because you need the money at the time. So those are the things that you'll be faced with. Takes into account on completion value, project costs, arrive at residual value of land. How to get favorable valuations? Get your own valuations. The way that works is that call up your lender, find out who are the valuers that they work with, and then don't get your lender to engage them. You say, look, you work with them, I'll get a valuation from them, and then assign the valuation and get it assigned to you. There's a difference when a bank orders a valuation and when you order the valuation directly. In both scenarios, money is going to come out of your pocket, whether the bank orders it or whether you order it. But in one scenario where you order it directly, it's going to come out in your favor, because you will say, hey, Charter Kramer, can you do this valuation for me? So he's going to worry, what is it for? Just I want to do a commercial valuation for marketing purposes or whatever. And if they do a valuation for you, they will be a lot more liberal in giving you a higher valuation, because they know it's not going to a bank. But once it is done, you can get that valuation and tell them, I need you to assign this valuation to XYZ bank. And then they've got to assign that valuation to the bank. So it's a little bit cheeky, but you got to get a higher valuation. And that's one of the tricks that you can use to get a higher valuation. So yeah, engage them directly and then have the valuation assigned to your lender. How to get favorable valuation: engage them directly, discuss their valuation methodology and feasibility assumptions with them first. I have fought regarding their project related site value, because they put in 18% as their entrepreneurial risk margin, which I didn't agree with. And discuss address of key comparable sites that you have considered. Prepare your project report to present to the valuer. You can have all of your feasibility, all of that. Look, they will be impressed if you showed them your project related site value. And if this was based on all of those things, and if you've already done those hard yards, and when you present it to them, it'll be a different, you'll impress them at a different level. So questions to assess your valuer: have they valued similar projects recently? Which ones in the same area? How do they perceive the supply and demand in that area? What are their views on the market in general? Ask them about their percentage of rental rates. What sort of feedback are they getting from lenders? Assess where the valuer is at in terms of the suburb of your project. Similar projects in their general perception of the project. Comparable sales used for commercial industrial investment property. Income capitalization is based on income generated by the property. I think in the feasibility section we have discussed the cap rate, how you can capitalize and arrive at a value of a commercial property based on the rent and the net income that it brings in. Then you've got depreciated replacement costs, which is land value plus improvement costs, renovation development cost less depreciation. So these are different methods. Now I don't do anything with depreciation replacement cost method. It's on the boutique developments is normally never used. But we discussed the discounted cash flow method, which was IRR, internal rate of return, discount rate where NPV was 0. We have discussed these in a lot more detail. But any given time you think we need to rediscuss, actually I will touch on them again when we do the feasibility module once again. We've got a maximum interest rate that can be charged to fully funded project before the project would show net loss. Positive NPV implies that present values of income greater than present value of cost, and therefore project is feasible. So just always remember that your NPV has to come out positive. If it's coming out negative, that project is no good. Forecast the value of property into future, say 10 years, and determines the value of the property at the end of the term, and then discounts the value back to its current NPV. And NPV is basically discounted revenues less discounted costs, and that's why the discounted revenue has to be greater than the discounted costs for NPV to be positive, because if it is positive, that means project's feasible. Then you've got residual value of land. In every financial feasibility application that I have sent to you, there is residual value of land based on the calculated target development margin. So whether you are doing the there was the 2-minute FISO or the full-scale FISO, there's a section there, and you can change the development margin, and based on the development margin you can find out what you should be paying for the land. So based on the maximum price of the land that the developer would pay to make the calculated development margin equal target hurdle rate, and target hurdle rate is equal to developer's required return for the project. So hurdle rate, as we discussed last time, was nothing but the target rate that we want to make. Calculated on target IRR based on maximum price for the land that the developer would pay to make the calculated internal rate of return, which is equal to target hurdle rate, or their NPV is equal to 0. IRR takes into account dimensions of time and uses it to differentiate projects or different cash flow exposures. Now, what you need to understand is this: if your project is less than 2 years, your residual value of land should be based on development margin. That's why I built that into the into both the applications, because most of the projects are within the 24-month mark. If it is greater than that, for example, you're developing it's a land subdivision. Yeah, a lot of money is going to go in. First, you're going to get the land subdivided. All the services are going to go there. Then you're going to do a house and land package on this, which is going to take you another 6 months to get your pre-sales. Then you're going to start building everything. It turns out to be a 4 years, 5-year project. That's when you'll be looking at RLV based on IRR and NPV. So you'll be looking at this calculation based on the internal rate of return. So what does a valuer look at? To assess a property value, a valuer will measure the property, record details on the number and types of rooms, along with fixtures, fittings, and improvements. So a valuer will always ask you for your specification sheet. And we'll discuss those things again when we get to marketing and off the plan contracts, because you've got to spec up whatever specs are going in your development. You got to spell them out. So what color, what kind of tiles are you going to use? What kind of floorboard are you going to use? What kind of kitchen tops are you going to use? What kind of appliances are going to? These are all part of specs, and people need to see, touch, feel. And there's a thing called material board, where you can take a big board and stick all the material of tiles, of the engineered floorboard, the color, the quality of the carpet, and you can take these different swatches of things and put them together on a board and give it to your agent for the people to come and touch and feel and see what you'll be selling. So this is all part of marketing. When we get in there, we'll discuss it in more detail. Location, building structure and its condition, building structural faults, standard of presentation and fit out, access, for example, good vehicle access. I mean, these are the different things that the valuer would look at, and they will look at for individual units, and they'll come up with a rate for all the individual units there. So the valuer combines these attributes together with recent comparable sales in the surrounding area and prevailing marketing conditions to produce a valuation report. Valuation should not be confused with appraisals. Now I want to show you a valuation report. Appraisal is very different. All the agents do all these appraisals, which is basically really means nothing. And an appraisal is only good if it's done on a rent for rental. A rental appraisal from an agent, that is the only thing that would have a little bit of a value for the bank, especially when you are going to hold one of the units and you're going to settle on it. So for the sale of that, the bank would say, look, can you go get a rental appraisal on this? And then you can tell the bank that, look, count the income that's going to come from it, because it's I'm going to be holding it. So that is the only time an appraisal would work. Now I wanted to show you the the valuation I showed you last time, and this time it'll make you a lot more. It'll make a lot more sense with you. You'll be able to recognize a lot more subheadings in there. Just give me 1 second. Where's the valuation? There it is. So now if you see this as the valuation report, it has all those things that we have discussed today. It has site area, zoning. It will talk about all the things that we have talked about. As I told you, that the banks will rely on what the QS recommends, and what the valuation report recommends as your risk. So QS will identify all the construction risks for this and then talk about it. Now it says cash flow as is about medium risk, which I don't understand. At the date of inspection, the land was improved with 2 dwellings in generally dated conditions. So we already know there was an old 2 houses that were on there that we demolished. Whilst we are satisfied that the highest and best use of the site is for redevelopment purposes, the dwellings in their current condition could provide a level of rental income on a short or fixed term lease basis. As the city property is not leased, there is no party revenue to cover mortgage interest, and that's the reason they identified that as a medium risk. So if this starts coming high or medium high or somewhere, you should know that your bank is going to come back to you with a lot of stringent conditions. So yeah, and you got, I mean, these are just basically them trying to fill in the report and everything, which they have to show that, oh, we did a lot of work, but all that information is available for free. So they go and take some photos. So these were the houses that were on the units. Now they look like this. You can't miss them. If you go down Nepean Highway, they look exactly like this. It's all done. Again, these are the area analysis for the same thing in evaluation. You've got project specifications, kitchen. Now this is the specifications that I was talking about. They will always ask for it. This is what we supplied to them. And on those scenarios, they say European appliances including cooktop, oven, range hood, dishwasher, underbend stainless steel sink. Based on the specs that we supply to them, they will then do the valuation of the units as well. Now, secondary improvements, each tunnels will be complemented by a secure garage with primary vehicular access, blah blah blah. Unit 1 and 12 enjoy private access. Unit 1 and 3 enjoy this, will benefit from a private open space with basic garden surrounding, and so on. So this is the one of the current development is just about to finish. So development cost summary, they will have market consideration, they will have risk assessment again. They are doing a risk assessment on different parts, different issues, land and neighborhood, land, planning, title, environmental issues. So 2 is low to medium and 3 is medium, and so on. So that's what they are trying to do. These are all the comparable sales, how they come up with different values. So now I want to understand what values they put in. Let me just keep going. So these are the 12 units. This is somewhere else. Sales evidence. Okay. Keep going. So these are just the different comparables that they've come up with. Now, they've allocated these values to these units at 700 and 700, and then extrapolated these values for them. But honestly, all these units are now worth a lot more from what the valuation that they came up with. So, and this is the project related site value, as you can see, and this is exclusive of GST, and how they've actually been able to put it together. And I've given you a same template, everything based on the exact calculation that they use for you to work with. So that's about valuations and everything, and I think we've done for today, unless you have questions. Any more questions? Okay. Casey, give me 1 second. Yes, Casey, go on.
Yeah, mate. I'm just looking at the property that the site I'm looking at, and the comparable sales. When you're looking at it, the cheapest one in the area it's actually the build area is the smallest, which makes the square area the cost per meter the most expensive, if that makes sense. So it's quite a bit more expensive.
Yeah.
So I remember you were saying that go for the cheapest, but if it's per meter, it becomes the more expensive. Like
have you got like an Excel table like this?
Yeah.
Where is that table?
I'm not, as in that's for what you're going to put on. I'm looking at because I've got no plans for it yet.
It doesn't matter. check out the sizes, check out the floor area. Once you've got the floor
Yeah.
area, even in the floor area, try and separate the garage size from it, because when you are looking at the selling price, you're only looking at the selling area, which would not include the private open space. Any backyard or any balcony will not be included in that, and there'll be no garage space included in that. It'll include your pure space on the ground floor or the first floor or the third floor, or the second floor, sorry. And that's all it will include. So try and find out what that is and see what it's sold for. Then do a square meter rate. And you were correct, because the smaller the unit is, let's say it's two better, correct? But it's way too small than a normal two better, as compared to other stages. But you might be able to get a lot more square meter rate for that, because if you compare it with everybody else, a two better is, let's say, $500,000, correct? But your two better is a little bit smaller than the normal two better, but it can be passed on as just a two better, and it got compared as 500,000. But when you divide that by the total area, you'll see that the smaller 200,000, the smaller two better got a higher per square meter rate, just because it was smaller, but it got passed in as a two better.
Yeah, because there's this one. It's a three better.
Yeah.
And it's tiny, so that's why it's got the lowest sale price. But when you do the square meter rate, yeah, it's the highest per square meter. So I'm not sure what.
So what that actually means is that bigger is not necessarily will get you the most money. There's only a perceived value of the size of every three better or every two better. So three betters are usually 160 square meters. Two betters are usually 130 square meters. In the build
Because
area.
this three better is only 100 square meters.
Yes,
it says
I actually make two betters that are 100 square meters, but that doesn't mean that a two better that's only 72 square meter is any smaller. Mine at 100 square meter could be too big, but that doesn't mean that they will fetch me more money. So you got to be careful when you are trying to look at the sizes and all of that. Why don't you, on your site and everything, Casey, put the full case together, and we'll do a feasibility, like a live feasibility, next Thursday on it.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, bring everything together, bring in the site, so long as you don't mind sharing the site with everybody. I'll do a full live. I'll ask you a lot of questions. If you don't know the answers to, we'll find out, and we'll just do it live on your address.
Yep, perfect.
No worries at all. Anybody else would like to ask a question? Thanks very much, Casey.
Cheers.
Anybody else would like to ask, add? All right, no worries at all. Guys, we'll call this a night, and I will see you guys